Okay, once your meat starts to brown in the skillet or frying pan, you can take your onion that you minced and add it directly to the meat, like so. You scrape it off. And that onion is going to add flavor to the meat. And then the next step is to add a fourth of a teaspoon of both rosemary and sage. So you're just going to dip it in the, or scoop it in the thing, level it off, and then add it directly to your mixture. And you're going to do the same with the sage. Make sure it's level. Let's see here. Alright, there it's level. And then add it. And then you're going to take your turner again, and you're just going to saute all of these ingredients together, and it's just going to add all the flavor to your meat mixture. Okay, once your meat mixture is beginning to be done cooking, you're going to want to bring it over to the colander and drain it. And another safety tip when cooking anything on a range like this, you always want to make sure your pan handles are turned away from the stove or into the stove. Never out here, because a young child or somebody may be able to knock it over and spill hot grease onto you. And so then you're just going to want to take it and carefully carry it over here and then drain it all into the colander. And then what I like to do is I'm just going to take my colander and dump it right back into my pan. And then all the grease is gone, and then you can just bring your pan back to your burner and begin to do the next step. Okay, the next step in cooking your meat mixture after you've drained it is to add half a cup of white wine and a dash of salt. The wine is just going to, again, add more flavor. And once you add the wine, you cook the meat mixture more until the wine is completely evaporated. So you're going to add your wine, and then add a couple shakes of salt, and then continue to cook your meat mixture. And another safety tip is if you ever do have a grease fire in the kitchen, first step is to remove it from heat. Second step is to cover the fire. Third step is to add some sort of base like baking powder. And then the last step is to use a fire extinguisher. We keep our fire extinguisher under the sink if we ever need to use it, but I've never experienced a grease fire. For this recipe, you need 2 egg yolks, so you're going to use an egg separator to get the yolks. So you're going to crack it and then break it into your separator. And then it'll separate out here. You just want to shake it out a little bit. And as you see, you're going to have egg yolk. You're just going to dump it in there. And then you're just going to do your second one. Now you're going to make your sauce for the meat mixture. So it calls for 4 tablespoons of butter, which you're going to melt in a pan. And then you're going to add your 4 tablespoons of flour and incorporate that well. And then you're going to add 2 cups of milk until it's thickened. This will all go very fast, that's why I'm going to explain it beforehand. So you're just going to add your butter, melt it a little. And then you don't want to burn your butter, so you want to make sure your butter keeps moving. And then as soon as it's almost done here we go. And then you're gonna add your flour, and you're gonna start stirring it. This is gonna give you the base of your mixture. So it's gonna be thick and clumpy because you're just mixing them together. And then when it's well incorporated, next you're gonna take your 2 cups of milk and pour it into the mixture to make it more liquid. And then you're just going to keep stirring until it's all incorporated. Now we're going to take this sauce that we made and we're going to pour it into our egg yolk mixture, and it's going to become the sauce that we put into our meat mixture to put into our... Okay, once you have your sauce heated and added to the egg yolk mixture, you're going to add it to the meat mixture. So you're just going to pour it in. Oh. And make sure you use a rubber scraper to try and get everything you can. Let me see here. That's pretty good. And then set that aside. And then you're going to take 1.5 packages of mozzarella cheese and add it to the mixture. You can just dump that in. And then you're just going to take your rubber scraper and stir all this up until it's an even mixture, and this is what's going to go into the noodles. And this should come to be look something like this. You just keep stirring, and then you don't need to put it back on the heat because you're eventually going to bake it. Okay, now I'll be making the tomato sauce that will go over the noodles before we put it in the oven. So this calls for 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 cans of stewed tomatoes, salt and pepper, half a cup of white wine, and whatever onions you have left. So basically you're going to stick your butter in the pan and then let that melt a little while. And then while this is happening, you can get ready to add your onions and your tomatoes and the rest of your ingredients. And then now some information about Italian cuisine is that they are very, very fond of their food. They take a lot of pride in their food, and it is a central part of their society. Some customs of theirs that they eat out a lot. They will eat out every day, sometimes every dinner, and their meals are usually not very expensive because they eat only what they can. Their portion sizes are very limited because they know that they do not want to waste any food, because to them food is very precious. And it is not uncommon in Italy to go out and eat a meal for 3 or 4 hours, because they will have 4 courses, usually a appetizer, a super salad, a main dish, and a dessert, and they will share a glass of wine with one of their friends or their family, and they will sit there and have a good time because it's usually good weather in Italy, and they can sometimes be out there for up to 3 or 4 hours. Now that my butter is done, I am going to add my onions, which I have here on a plate. And then I'm going to let these saute a little bit in here. And then I'm going to add...
Stop.
Now that we've sauteed the onions, we're going to add the cooking wine and let that evaporate into our mixture. And it doesn't take long for it to evaporate, but we're going to let it cook. Okay, once the tomatoes are sauteed and the white wine is evaporated, you're going to want to add your cans of tomatoes and your salt and pepper. So you're going to take this, pour it in there, and then do the second one, and then add a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt. And then you're going to let this simmer for about 15 minutes, and while you're doing that, you can stuff your pasta shells. Okay, in the baked cannelloni, it calls for 14 pasta shells. And what you're going to do is bring your water to a boil, and then you're just going to want to take all your pasta, they come in little individual packages, and just add them to your water, and the water will come to less of a boil. I'm just going to dump this in here. You don't want to lose any of your noodles, otherwise that'd be bad. And then you just want to turn it up, so it's going to be at a, it says cook at a boil, so you're going to want to make sure the water is still boiling, and then periodically you're going to want to stir your noodles, otherwise it might bubble over. And a trick we have here at our household is to stick a wooden spoon over the stock pot, because, I don't know, it just helps to not let it boil over. And this is a stock pot that you are cooking the noodles in. And make sure you know at what time you're supposed to cook your noodles, because every pasta is different. And for the cannelloni, it calls for 7 minutes. So you're just gonna go to the nearest timer. I like to use a microwave, and you're gonna set it for 7 minutes, and then you're just gonna keep stirring to make sure it doesn't boil over and the noodles don't stick to the bottom of the pan. Okay, once your noodles are done cooking and they're soft, you can turn off your timer, and then you're just gonna take your stock pot full of the water and be careful and bring it over to a sink, and make sure you have a colander in there, because then you'll be able to drain it, and then you're just gonna pour it in there. Then you can put this back on the stove so it doesn't burn anything. And then you're gonna take your noodles. Oh, I'm drinking a little there. And then you're gonna take I have another stock pot here filled with cold water, and the recipe calls for the noodles to be drained and then immediately dumped in cold water. So then I'm just gonna dump it in cold water. And then you're good. Okay, now you're gonna want to stuff your pasta shells with the meat and sauce mixture. So you're gonna take your little scooper here again, and you're just gonna take it and open up your pasta shell, scoop right on in there, and then you just shake it a little to get it to move down, and then you can fill them with however much you want to, but I'm just going to do 2 scoops. And then when you get that done, you're just going to take it, lay it on its side, and put it right into the 9x13 pan, which you're supposed to grease, and I greased it beforehand. Okay, once your tomato sauce is done, you're going to pour it onto your shells, and then you're going to put it in the oven. So you're just going to pour it on and try to get it evenly distributed. And then just the pan back down. And then just take this and move it around so it's distributed a little here. And then once that's good, it's gonna look something like this. Okay, once you have it done and spread on the noodles, you're gonna take it and pull out the bottom rack of the oven all the way out until it's good to use, and then set your 9x13 pan on it. Push the rack all the way and make sure it's centered. Close your oven door and set the timer for 15 minutes.